King Charles makes a monumental mistake by giving Prince Harry the audience with Meghan, Archie, and Lily.
The back and forth has been absolutely insane. Yes, I'm coming. Yes, I'm bringing Meghan and the kids. Just kidding, I'm not. Security's too intense. Yes, I'm staying at Buckingham Palace. No, he's not staying at Buckingham Palace.
And who's the person enabling all of this? Who is the individual enabling Harry's hideous mental pathology, the victim mentality? My husband! Yes, Meghan Markle, his wife.
The King and the royal courtiers, the royal staff, are absolutely furious with Harry for his response to his crushing defeat by the Daily Mail in the High Court last week.
Harry couldn't contain himself as ever, simply because he then described His Majesty's government and, of course, the Justice as a total whitewash. I mean, why would you do that?
He's going to have a very bad time. In 2 weeks, I think the 29th of July, the judge decides who is going to pay what.
And I think that's a really big danger for the monarchy, because Harry and Meghan, again, can say in some ways whatever they want and can continue to act as if they are still working members of the royal family when they are not, because Harry has said some constitutionally and diplomatically charged statements over even just the last couple of months.
Meghan Markle flew 5,000 M, brought the children, and walked into Highgrove wanting one single thing that would have reset everything for them. And King Charles looked at her and said, "Know what happened inside those 47 minutes, and what happened right after is why this so-called reunion completely fell apart."
King Charles has officially met Meghan, Harry, Archie, and Lily at Highgrove House, his Gloucestershire country residence. Well, this is a big story and a big development.
Yeah, it is. At the heart of it, it's grandparents meets and reunited with his grandchildren. That's the initial thing that you have to look at, the human element of it.
With me, because by the end of this, you'll understand exactly what they were really after and why they left with nothing. Let's start with what the headlines told you. The King and Queen hosted the Duke and Duchess of Sussex along with Archie and Lead at Highgrove House, a family reunion, a breakthrough piece at last. That's the fairy tale.
The royal re-entry has happened. It is being confirmed. Prince Archie and Princess Elizabeth and Meghan are reuniting with their grandfather, King Charles, for the first time in 4 years. People's reporting. The long-awaited reunion with their grandfather, the Buckingham Palace confirmed on Friday, today, that King Charles and Queen Camilla hosted Prince Harry and Meghan Markle and the couple's 2 children this afternoon.
Now here's what actually happened. According to sources close to the arrangements, Harry and Meghan didn't even know the meeting was confirmed until roughly 20 minutes before it happened. Think about that for a moment. They were kept waiting in the area, not at a palace, not at a royal residence, just waiting like job applicants, hoping the interview doesn't get cancelled. Why would the king do that? Simple: no leaks, no tip-offs, no photographers. Conveniently positioned on a hillside, because after 6 years of stories mysteriously finding their way into the press, the palace trusts this couple about as far as they can throw them. And when they finally got inside 47 minutes, that's it, they crossed an ocean. And the king gave them less time than most of us spend at a dentist appointment.
Charles is not quite the pushover that some people seem to think he is, nor is all forgotten, nor will it ever be. Harry and Meghan will never live down their treachery or the lies they told about Charles and Camilla, and that's before we get to their violation of William and Catherine. Tom Sykes of the Royalists had a completely different take, though, saying that Harry and Meghan just won and that Charles will rue the day that he gave in by granting them an audience.
Now, there's a reason the meeting happened over tea. And it's not because anyone was thirsty, as Lady Colin Campbell put it. And I love this tea is the perfect occasion to keep people at arm's length while the civilities are maintained. It's polite, it's controlled, and it has a built-in ending.
King Charles dealing with, again, this petulant behaviour of, I'm coming, I'm not coming, I'm bringing Meghan and the kids, but I'm not bringing Meghan and the kids. I mean, you and I, the last time we spoke, I think we were both pretty convinced that Meghan wasn't going to be coming.
And if you look at the cost of Invictus, the security, that the investment in security for Harry and Meghan at every Invictus event, the cost is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Here's the part that really tells you everything, though. Before this trip, Harry had reportedly sent through a list of what he wanted, where he'd stay, how things would work, his terms. He got none of it, not a single item. He wanted Buckingham Palace. He was told, no, you left it too late. He wanted things on his schedule. The palace set the schedule. Every demand quietly declined.
Close to Harry said the family's return was not how he wanted it. Diddums. If extra security had been in place, he wanted the children involved in some public events. So again, no intention of actually keeping their faces hidden if he got what he wanted. Harry will return to the UK in September, and with one family reunion under his belt, another in the autumn has not been ruled out by either side.
That's not a reunion. That's a father showing his son exactly whose terrain he's standing on. But if you think the tea was the interesting part, wait until you hear who else was in that room. Because her presence tells you everything about how much this family trusts Harry. Queen Camilla rarely stays at Highgrove. That's a known fact. She prefers her own private home in Wiltshire on the weekends. She wasn't even in the room last September when Harry had his brief 50-minute chat with his father. She left them to it.
The danger always with Harry and Meghan is that they're trying to act like celebrities when they do technically have royal titles, and then people kind of drag the rest of the monarchy down to the celebrity D-list level. But Catherine and William just absolutely shined this weekend with them and their children, and I think they are obviously the future of the monarchy. It is Catherine and William, and unfortunately they have to deal with this Harry and Meghan freak show. It does sort of drive some of the attention away from them.
So why this time was she sitting right there? Because, and I've reported on this pattern going back years, Charles and William made a quiet vow a long time ago, never be alone with Harry, never, not out of hatred, out of self-protection. Think about what this family has learned the hard way. Private conversations end up in a book, family moments end up on Netflix, a grandmother's private words end up paraphrased on Oprah's couch in front of the entire world. So Camilla wasn't there to pour the tea, she was there as a witness, a second set of ears, because if Harry ever walks out and claims his father said something, sympathized with his court battles, promised him something, apologized for something, the palace can now respond with those 4 devastating words. The late Queen made famous recollections may vary, she wrote the playbook.
And what of the Queen's presence at Highgrove on Friday? Lots of people were surprised by that. Camilla rarely stays there, preferring to spend weekends at her private home in Wiltshire. When Harry flew to the UK, Camilla was in the room, but she left them to it last September when Harry saw his father for a 50-minute chat over tea.
Charles is simply running it. One royal friend put it beautifully. Oh, to have been a fly on the hydrangeas, whatever her personal feelings about her stepson. And there is no love lost there. We all know that Camilla is fiercely loyal to her husband. She wanted to witness what was said, and just as importantly, what was not said.
Charles's team knew that the road towards Friday's family reunion would be rocky. Helmet on, he looked ready for battle on Monday morning as he strapped into a Challenger 2 at the Tank Museum in Dorset. When it comes to the Sussexes and the palace, where there is existential mistrust about Harry and Meghan's motives, planning a family meeting is never simple. For much of last week, courtiers were wargaming any potential fallout from a meeting, including if Harry was to come out and claim that Charles sympathised with his case against the media. Would it create peace in our time or discord and constitutional controversy, a royal aide said. We are always trying to think about what is best, not just for grandfather, but for a sovereign and a head of state. Those close to Charles said all of this weighed on his mind before seeing the Sussexes on Friday, but a friend of the prince's scoffed at the idea that Harry's excoriating statement would have any lasting impact on the bond between father and son. Is any of that actually going to make a difference to their personal relationship? I don't think so, they said.
Now I have to mention this because so many of you have raised it. Plenty of sharp-eyed viewers have looked at the king's confirmed engagements that day, done the math on the driving times, and said the schedule barely adds up. It's tight, suspiciously tight. Make of that what you will. But here's what matters more than the clock, whether that meeting lasted 47 minutes or 2 hours. Meghan walked out of Highgrove without the one thing she flew across the Atlantic to get. And what was that thing? This is the part of the story almost nobody is covering.
There is no love lost between Harry and Camilla. That much we very much know. But Roy Anika says she's a canny operator, fiercely loyal to Charles. Whatever her views of her stepson, she wanted to support her husband for an emotionally loaded meeting and to witness what was and was not said. Oh, to have been a fly on the hydrangeas, a friend said.
A royal insider told Rob Shooter of Shooter Scoop something remarkable. The real prize of this entire trip wasn't the tea, it wasn't the reconciliation, it wasn't even the children meeting their grandfather. It was a photograph, one single image of Harry, Meghan, and the kids standing beside the king. That's what they came for, because Meghan understands the power of imagery better than almost anyone alive. One smiling picture with the monarch, and suddenly the whole world is reminded they're still royalty. They still belong, they still have access. The insider called it exactly what it is, branding gold.
That is an interesting take on Camilla turning up, which did surprise a lot of people. But remember, I have reported in the past, Brittany, and this dates right back to really 2021. Charles and William vowed they would never be alone with Harry. They just couldn't risk being alone with Harry, because what if he came out and said something that was constitutionally significant? So I'm actually going to give Camilla a pass here and say that it's understandable that she would want to be there, so that if Harry does make an outrageous allegation in the months or years to come, the royal family could say, well, our recollections vary, and remember, Charles and Camilla were both there.
Think about everything they've launched since leaving the shows, the jams, the podcasts, the lifestyle brand. What's the one thing every single venture has been missing? The royal stardust, the palace connection, the thing that made them interesting in the first place. A photo with the king would have reset the entire narrative overnight. Every magazine on earth would have run it. Royal reconciliation, their status restored in a single frame. And here's the beautiful part: Buckingham Palace knew its sources. Say the palace understood precisely what the Sussexes hoped to achieve and declined to hand them the moment. No photo, no press release. With smiling faces, the king retained all the rights, all the images, everything.
The big thing here when it comes to Harry's visit, and this visit in particular with Charles, is that, again, we're getting mixed messages from the palace, because yes, of course, there's this personal dynamic here and this family dynamic, and everybody understands that, and everybody understands maybe to a certain extent the desire to rebuild the relationship. But what about the monarchy itself, the institution, the 1,000-year-old institution Charles is supposed to represent? I feel like that is sort of remains unclear here.
According to Neil Sean's sources, Harry and Meghan were genuinely shocked by this. They apparently believed an official picture would be released while they were still in the country. They waited. It never came, so Meghan flew home to California with a cup of tea and a polite goodbye. Nothing to post, nothing to sell, nothing to leverage for a couple whose entire business model is built on their connection to the crown. That's not a setback, that's a catastrophe.
Reunion took place at Highgrove House, the monarch's private country residence in Gloucestershire, England. No images are expected to be released from the reunion, and no further details will be provided, as it was a private family meeting. Wow. So this is interesting, because it's like, clearly, was that part of the deal where the king's like, okay, we're going to let it out know that you were here. You were here, but we're going to make it clear it was private. There are no images and no more is to come from it. And therefore, if anything else comes from it, they'll be able to point it to Harry, is how this sort of feels like.
But you know what makes this whole trip genuinely hard to stomach? It's not the photo, it's who was curtsying to whom, and which grandfather was left sitting alone in Mexico. Here's a question so many of you have asked in the comments, and honestly, it deserves to be said out loud. Archie and Lilith have two grandfathers. One of them lives in a palace and wears a crown. The other is an elderly, seriously unwell man named Thomas Markle, who has never, not once, been allowed to meet his grandchildren.
Whatever they want, and can continue to act as if they are still working members of the royal family when they are not, because Harry has said some constitutionally and diplomatically charged statements over even just the last couple of months that could potentially put the monarchy in a tricky situation. So he's continuing to act like a rogue royal. Again, Charles didn't get a huge level of concessions from them for this visit, and so this will embolden Harry and Meghan's worst tendencies, and I think the worst is going to be yet to come from them.
Now think about what Meghan did on this trip. She reportedly curtsied to the king and queen, the same institution. She went on global television and accused of racism the same family she claimed drove her to the darkest thoughts imaginable, all forgiven, apparently all water under the bridge the moment there was something to gain, but her own father, a man whose great crime was one foolish mistake with a paparazzi photographer before her wedding. He remains completely cut off, no visits, no photos of his grandchildren, no phone calls. Royal commentator Peter Ford said it perfectly. It's confusing that Meghan will not accept an apology from her own alien father for one indiscretion, but is perfectly willing to go crawling back to the royal family that she claimed was racist.
What about Thomas Markle? Does he not get a look in? If she's so keen, Harry, with his father recovering from cancer and still having treatment, the other side, repair the family connections, however hard it might be. And the Markle family is as dysfunctional at times, maybe even more so than our own royal family. So I think, maybe it's the time to take a long, hard look and say, well, perhaps from a PR perspective, we need to seal the deal everywhere. But if you say, quite rightly, if there's anything leaks out, then I'm afraid that will not be a good look for the Sussexes.
Why would that be? Well, ask yourself what Thomas Markle has that Meghan needs nothing, no crown, no castle, no stardust. And that right there tells you everything about what this family reunion was really about. It was never about grandchildren knowing their grandfather. If it were, there'd be a plane landing in Mexico. It was about access to the one grandfather whose association can still be monetized. One commenter put it in a way I can't improve. On if they want the public to believe in their sincerity. Take those kids to Thomas Markle, don't hold your breath.
The whatever he's taken to sort of the hallucinogenics have really messed with his brain that he's taken probably to help him with his mental issues have made them all worse. And so he is just this unemployed, in my personal opinion, loser who's just constantly trying to recapture what he had and not accepting his new life and trying to have a new job. I mean, he did it for a half a second, realized it was hard because, the real world is hard. And it's like, you know what, I'll just go back to this thing where I can do a little bit and look like I'm having fun and not really do anything else. Because Harry, it's just for show. This is just a facade. There's nothing underneath there. There's nothing of depth to this man. And he's just going around and going to anybody who will give him a paycheck, basically.
And speaking of using family for gain, what they did next after leaving Highgrove might be the most cynical move of the entire trip, because it involves Diana. After Highgrove, the family reportedly traveled to Althorpe, the Spencer ancestral estate, and the final resting place of Princess Diana. She lies on a small island in the middle of a lake in the grounds, where she grew up. Now on the surface, a son taking his children to their grandmothers. Resting place sounds touching, but those of us who've watched this couple for 6 years learned a long time ago to ask one question about everything they do. What's the content play? Here it is.
That you've always got that sort of hanging over the royal family's head, because if it was a frosty meeting, you don't know. Look, it was a lovely sunny day, as it had been everywhere in the Cotswolds, and his gardens are magnificent. So I hope the children have had a good chance to run around one of the best gardens in the country and have a normal family experience. I don't know whether they stayed, whether they went back. The feeling is they may be staying at Althorpe, but I'm speculating there. But also it throws into, Meghan seems to be desperate to have the links with the royal family, even albeit in these private circumstances, but it shows that they've still got a bit of an olive branch and a bit of a way in to enhance their royal connections.
Next year marks 30 years since Diana's death, and Harry and Meghan are reportedly deeply involved in a Diana documentary project. For that anniversary, a project that needs footage, emotional moments, storylines involving Diana's grandchildren. Suddenly, a private pilgrimage starts looking an awful lot like a location scout. The estate was reportedly locked down for 2 days. Sources insist nothing was filmed, nothing will leak. No photos will emerge, and look, maybe that's true, but we've been hearing nothing will leak from this camp for 6 years, and somehow something always leaks. It might not come tomorrow, it might arrive perfectly packaged in a documentary next year. Even Angela 11 raised the question that made me stop. What do you actually say to a 5- and 7-year-old at a grave site on an island? Children that young taken to see a grandmother they never knew, in circumstances that frightened even the adults describing it.
But what apparently Harry and Meghan thought they were going to be doing was the fact that ultimately there was going to be an official picture launched out, normally while they were still in, the country, in England. And they were shocked by this, 100% shocked. And I know this for a fact, because we know that then they went up to Althorpe, and whatever happened up there, we'll never know until they decide to share that, because that was completely locked down for 2 days, all thanks to Earl Spencer, Charles Spencer, right?
If the motive was pure, it's questionable parenting. If the motive was content, it's something far worse. This generation, many of you watching, stood in the streets in 1997. You watched 2 boys walk behind that coffin. Diana's memory means something. She deserves to rest in peace, not to be a season finale. Now all of this raises the obvious question: why the sudden desperation? Why fly the whole family over now after all these years? The answer arrived in a London courtroom just days before, and it's Brutal days before this reunion, Prince Harry suffered the most crushing legal defeat of his life, 4 years of litigation against the Daily Mail's publisher, a 46-day trial, and the verdict, all 97 allegations, phone, hacking unlawful information, gathering all of it dismissed, every single one thrown out by a high court judge.
I think it's also the same thing for their grandmother, Diana, because I think if a 5 and a 7-year-old have to go to water where she is...
she's on an island, isn't she?
Yeah, she's on an island, and she's there. And what do you say to a child? There is your grandmother. I think they'd be terrified that she was in water. I think it's not a very nice thing to show your little ones. But that is very important to them. Harry wanted to do that, so that's what they did.
I mean, what do you think that is about? I mean, that just strikes me as headline hunting, to be honest with you.
Yeah, but it's also about the fact that they want to do a series about Diana towards her death. And that would be very useful. So who knows if they've started taking photographs of her.
Now a wise man takes that loss quietly. Harry is not a wise man. Within hours, he released a blistering statement calling the ruling a complete and obvious whitewash, effectively accusing a senior British judge of corruption. Let me explain why that's spectacularly stupid. These are the King's courts. That judge acts in his father's name. There were reportedly jaws on the floor at the palace. Profound constitutional upset, Harry immediately announces. This is a typical whitewash, blah, blah, blah. Well, there's two sides to this. First of all, the King in the end.
That the King and the royal courtiers, the royal staff, are absolutely furious with Harry for his response to his crushing defeat by the Daily Mail in the High Court last week. You know, a 4-year case culminating in a 46-day trial, 40 journalists from the Mail interviewed, various celebrities interviewed, the result of which was that all 97 of Harry's allegations of illegality, phone hacking, planting microphones, using unlawful detectives, all 97 were thrown out of court ignominiously. Absolutely shameful on the part of Harry.
Harry didn't just insult a judge, he insulted the entire system his father sits at the head of. And here's the delicious irony. That same judge, the one Harry just publicly accused of a whitewash, is right now deciding how much Harry has to pay in costs. That decision lands on July the 29th, 2 weeks. The total bill for this case has been put as high as $10 million, attacking the man holding your invoice, genius. But it gets worse.
Harry immediately announces this is a typical whitewash, blah, blah, blah. Well, there's two sides to this. First of all, the King, in the end, these are the King's courts. They're his courts. The judge, in the end, is His Majesty's judge. He cannot have his son going round insulting the courts of this land and the judges of this land.
Harry's co-claimants included Sir Elton John, a man so wealthy the legal bill is pocket change to him. And what are we hearing? Elton is reportedly furious about Harry's statement after the loss and refusing to help cover Harry's share. So follow the money. Massive legal bills do wealthy friends closing their wallets. A charity, Invictus, reportedly 25 million short. And suddenly Harry urgently needs tea with Dad. One commenter nailed it. Harry only wanted a reunion with the bank of Dad, nothing else. Which brings us to the one man watching all of this with absolute fury, the man who was overruled, undermined, and humiliated by his own father, Prince William Tom Sykes of the Royalist. Didn't mince words. He called this meeting a total unconditional capitulation by the King, and in his words, a humiliation for the Prince of Wales, because understand William's position. For 6 years, his response to his brother has been a wall of silence, unambiguous, consistent. He believes Harry and Meghan are manipulators who should be given nothing, because every time they've been given something, they've weaponized it.
Harry is so stupid because Mr. Justice Nicklin is now sitting in judgment of what costs to award the Daily Mail. This case has cost £50 million. The Daily Mail quite reasonably is saying, well, we didn't bring the case. We didn't want to have the case. We've had to wage this case. We've had to defend ourselves. The costs surely should not be ours. Usually judges will go, no, you're absolutely right. You're the defendants. You want the case. They have to pay for you. Well, any doubts that Mr. Justice Nicklin might have had about that surely got dispelled when when Harry accused him of presiding over a whitewash. What a stupid, dumb thing for the dim Duke to do.
And William isn't just any opinion in this family. He's the man carrying an ever-growing share of the actual work of the monarchy. While his father battles illness, he earned a voice in this decision. His father overruled him anyway publicly for the son, who called the family a death cult in print. But here's the thing about William. He didn't brief the press. He didn't release a statement. He answered in a language far more powerful, says Meghan didn't.
He added the palace machine will wrap this in the language of grandfatherly tenderness, but this was a capitulation. A total unconditional capitulation, and I'm afraid it exposes a fatal flaw in Charles that is the flip side of his cultured, artistic, and humane nature. He is a soft touch. It also, and this needs saying plainly as well, a humiliation for the Prince of Wales. William has set his face against exactly this. His camp's response has been a consistent and unambiguous wall of silence. He believes his brother and sister-in-law are manipulators who should be given nothing. His father has now overruled him in the most public way imaginable and done it while William is the one carrying an ever-growing share of the actual work of and support for the monarchy.
That same weekend, while Harry was doing goat yoga, yes, a 42-year-old man rolling around a pen thanking goats, that actually happened. William and Catherine walked into Wimbledon with George and Charlotte, and Centre Court rose to its feet, a spontaneous, thunderous standing ovation. For Catherine, someone shouted, "We love you, Kate," into the silence. George and Charlotte, nervous, but poised, chatted with Britain's tennis star like the future monarchs they are. No PR strategy, no leaked briefings, just a family doing its duty beautifully. The contrast could not be more brutal. One brother got a standing ovation from a nation. The other got 47 minutes and a locked photo album.
Says Meghan didn't actually get exactly what she wanted because the Duchess, or the fake Duchess, actually hoped that it was all going to be about securing an image. An insider telling him that a photograph was the real prize. Meghan understands the power of imagery better than almost anyone. A single picture with the king would have reminded the world that she and Harry are still royalty. That's branding gold. The Sussexes have painfully discovered that none of their post-royal ventures have carried the prestige or global attention that comes with a visible connection to the monarchy. This wasn't about family, the insider says. It was about access. Royal association remains their most valuable asset. A smiling photograph with the king would have instantly reset the narrative, reinforced their status, and reminded everyone that they still belong in the royal conversation.
And yet don't relax just yet, because if you think this story ended at Highgrove, you've missed what Harry is actually building toward. There's a date circled on his calendar, and what he wants on that date should worry everyone. Here's what most coverage completely missed. This trip was never the destination. It was step one. A royal source said it in plain sight. Every journey of 1,000 miles begins with one footstep. Palace insiders confirm Harry returns to the UK in September, and another family meeting in the autumn has not been ruled out by either side. There are even whispers of a possible Balmoral invitation in late August, depending on how quiet the Sussexes stay. And then there's the big one. This visit marked the one-year countdown to the Invictus Games in Birmingham. Follow the logic. What does Harry want 1 year from now? The king in the audience at Invictus, possibly with Meghan and the children beside him. And that's when the photo comes, the picture Charles refused to give them at Highgrove. Harry wants it delivered on the world stage, instead wrapped in charity and cameras, where the king can't say no without a scandal. This weekend wasn't a reunion. It was reconnaissance. Friends say Harry flew home buoyed, really happy, really energized. Of course, he believes the door is open. And as one friend of the king admitted, Charles will never fully close it, because in his words, blood is blood, but the lessons of history are screaming at this family.
We saw the most perfect illustration of what real royalty is over the weekend. And actually, I think William and Catherine won the optics war, because Harry just looked like a fool without his wife or his children, whereas William and Catherine looked exactly like the royals we want to see, right? Including a lovely PDA at the polo.
Yes, they are very, very classy and elegant, Catherine and William, and they are examples of what royals are, which is it's different than celebrity. They act in a different way, and
they let Andrew drift for decades with no consequences, and look how that ended. Now the same pattern is repeating in real time, and the palace has learned nothing. So the question isn't whether Harry and Meghan come back, it's what they take with them next time they came for a photograph, and left with a cup of tea. No image, no apology, demanded no leverage gained by that measure. Highgrove was a total failure, but September is already circled on their calendar, and if you've watched this family as long as we have, you know they never settle for tea twice. July 29th, a judge hands Harry the bill. Autumn brings the next move. This story is far from over. The videos on your screen right now break down exactly what William is planning and what that court ruling could really cost Harry. Don't miss them. Wedding of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Politics News watched.